Kind of a situation, like real-time risk assessment.
I think that's where it falls into looking at the new business coming in and how we're leveraging AI. So in this case, that risk assessment is your third party, your new line of business coming in, and understanding not just how the AI is being leveraged, but what controls we have in place to enable the business while managing the security. And I think that's the balance we've got to do, but we have to ask the questions, and it can't just be checking a box, you know?
That's the whole point. At this point in time, like for example, I'm going to take Microsoft example, they've been an amazing partner for me, right? Their data is non-retrievable, as in the AI learns, but there is no reference back to that learning, right? But you don't know who's creating an LLM and it's retrievable.
I would argue that technology that was even 20 years ago, if done right, can still solve today's problems. Organizing your data. For example, let's take, I'll use an analogy of a library, okay? Let's say we have lots of books, but you go into a library, there are no racks, there are no shelves, there are no sections, there are no rooms, but the books are spread and thrown across the board, all over, on the floor, everywhere. There is so much value. Everybody knows. There is potential for commercialization, monetization, time for insights, and all sorts of opportunities. But if the data is not...
We're starting to deploy AI to make decisions. So it's decision making.
How so? I mean, how?
And now the question is, when do you bring in the human in the cycle? Is it only when there is an exception?
Like a hard, you mean
when do you bring a human into the cycle of decision making? Yeah. How often do you want to check?
Decision making in a sense that should we grant access to that person?
Not just grant access. Not just grant access.
Did it work or did it not?
Yeah.
It becomes complicated now, right? So you have on-prem data, you have cloud data, now you have the AI data, right? And the AI data, the problem is, who is the owner of those data?
But the real question is, if you have 5,000 engineers that are working for you at 3 different locations and they're all working on designing the next iteration of Tesla, how can you control all of those people when we've grown up since the computer age using a search engine to go and find out what kind of documentation is out there that will help us to do our job better?
You need data custodians. Like surely 5,000 people, they're not all working at the same exact part, right? Like surely they're siloed. You almost need every manager to become like a data custodian in a sense, to some degree, right?
You need to be able to authenticate the person. Are you who you say you are? You need to be able to authenticate the device, whatever it is, iPad, phone, computer, doesn't matter if it's a device. And now the new challenge, in my opinion, is we need to be able to authenticate the data as well, right?
Let's discuss the topic at hand, which is data is the new, right? That's what we're supposed to talk about?
Currency?
That thing. So, the interesting thing about credit cards, in my opinion, I want to throw this out there, is that if I take somebody's credit card, the life of that credit card is going to be probably anything 30 days or less. Once I do a charge on that, it gets denied after they recognize it's been stolen or swiped, correct? If I take the social security number of a 9-year-old, I will own that individual. I will have a complete identity and nobody's going to know about it till the first time that kid does a loan for college. How many parents actually do Credit Karma for their kids? I will say less than 5%. So guess what? What is the value of a social security number of a 10-year-old? But by the way, all the medical records you have been breached at least 5-6 times.
As AI becomes, prevalent across the landscape, and we've got hackers using it, what does that do to the data of a company? Increasingly, the data now we can even quantify it in the sense that data is moving to the cloud. Most companies are now moving their on-prem data stores to the cloud.
Most companies have, hopefully,
a data classification guideline.
Yes.
Yeah, that does
So
that.
you talk about the confidential data, you talk about sensitive data, you talk about secure data, and if the data doesn't fall into one of those, it, you make those decisions. But it also depends on the business you're in.
And administrative controls are going to be weak unless you have some sort of oversight involved, right? And if you start key log monitoring or something like that on your users, you're breaking that whole trust model with them. So multiple sides you have a problem.
What do you mean by the systemic oversight?
I mean, you can't expect a human to be overseeing what is happening there. You need to have systemic oversight, means systemic controls. So it's not like blocking, but you are putting systemic controls in place so that when you can wrongly use the technology or even unknowingly wrongly use the technology, so exposing yourself.